Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, GL Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's July 16, 2022 revised order extending remote participation by all members any meeting of a public body. This meeting of the Select Board will be conducted both in person and via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and our parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website. For this meeting, members of the public and committee members may attend this meeting in person. For those who wish to do so, they may attend remotely. For those who are not in person, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Pursuant to MGL 7C 30A Section 20F, after notifying the chair of a public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body, may transmit the meeting through any medium. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any such recordings. Meeting is being recorded by the town of Barrington, by the Berkshire Eagle, Berkshire Edge, and other members of the public. Any member of the public wishing to speak at the meeting must receive permission of the chair. The listing of agenda items are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. So all 5 members of the Select Board are here in person, so we will not be taking roll call votes except during special permits. A motion to convene as sewer commissioners.
Make a motion to convene as sewer commissioners.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Someone presenting this?
Yeah, well, Joe's here to answer any questions you have, but in your packet is a list of proposed sewer billing changes that we'd like the board to review and approve.
Good. Do I have a motion?
I make a move to approve this sewing billing change manual as presented.
Second.
Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstentions, none, it's unanimous. Motion to reconvene as Select Board,
Make a motion to reconvene this stuff.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Joe.
Very good. Select Board's announcement statements, Eric?
Nothing at this time.
Barrington?
Nothing, thank you. Nothing.
Town manager's report.
Okay, I have 2 actually for tonight. First is Houstonic Waterworks. I don't have anything new to report to the public this evening, but I do want to mention to the board that I'll be sending an email to the 5 of you looking for a date to convene an executive session with our attorney for next steps, or a conversation on next steps under reason 6. So you can expect an email from me within a day or 2. And my add-on for this evening is that I just wanted to mention publicly that I'll be announcing the appointment of an interim fire chief through a press release this week. That's all I have.
Licenses and permits. After this, I'm gonna move things around a little bit, the order. Vern Kennedy at number 10 restaurant for a 1-day beer and wine license for Berkshire Opera Festival's event on April 16, 2023 at St. James Place. Do you see anything?
I don't see Vern on the line unless there's someone else here.
Is there anyone here? Is there someone remotely here? Just raise your hand. Do I have a motion?
I need to recuse myself because I'm a board rep at St. James.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do we have any questions or discussions?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Cynthia Joyner of Fiddlehead's Grill for an annual weekday entertainment license at 999 Main Street from noon to midnight. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the annual weekday entertainment license to Cynthia Joyner at Fiddlehead's Grill at 999 Main Street from noon to midnight on
Every day.
There we go. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Second.
Yes. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, so we will start with. Well, it's National Grid meeting. We can get that out of the way. I think. there's anyone from National Grid, just raise your hand and we'll recognize you.
The names I have, I do not see listed here.
Okay, so let me take care of that for you. Let's start with a public hearing. We'll have the public hearing for St. James Place, and then we'll also do number 7C, which is a recommendation to the planning board on a special permit. So let's start with a special permit application from St. James Place Inc., CL White Engineering Inc., to permit the construction of electronic marquee sign in the Village Center Overlay District at 352 Main Street, Barrington, for sections 9.6 and 10.4 of the zoning bylaw. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I make a motion to open the public hearing. And I also need to recuse myself. I'm sorry, I should have waited.
If they don't make the motion, you're gonna recuse yourself.
Yeah, I'm recusing myself on the board director at St. James.
Ed, you make a motion.
Yeah, motion to open the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, Eric,
Aye.
Garfield,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
and I, it's unanimous. Explanation, is there someone here from St. James Place?
Did promote.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go, could you give us an explanation of the project?
Yes, sir. First off, thank you all for your time this evening. My name is Brent White from White Engineering on behalf of the applicant. And I also believe some members of our team were joining virtually as well. I can't see everybody who's officially on the meeting here. But just want to believe.
Yeah,
So-
do you have any other names? Because I don't think we're seeing
I'm
anyone.
looking for Seth and Sally. And I don't.
That's there.
Great, okay.
They're not joining remotely, they are
Okay.
in the flesh.
Okay. Well, thank you all again for your time this evening. Haresh is joining us via Zoom here. The purpose for the application here is for a special permit for work within the Village Center Overlay District. Before I begin, I'd just like to thank Town Planner and Assistant Manager Chris Rembold for working with the Building Commissioner to help navigate all of the varying permitting processes that we have to ensure that this sign is fully compliant with all regulations within the town of Great Barrington. Somewhat of a convoluted process, but appreciate his efforts in helping to navigate that. So in this case here, the select board here is charged with respect to the work in the Village Center Overlay District. And there's really three priorities of the Village Center Overlay District. The first is to improve village vitality and walkability. The second is to promote mixed uses as well as economic revitalization. And really the work at St. James Place and Fred and Sally Harris bought it really has accomplished all three of those through servicing a number of different not-for-profits and performance entities here. They have transformed the church as well as the office building behind that there to really be a community asset. And the purpose for the marquee here is really to better advertise all the different performance opportunities as well as other philanthropic efforts that St. James Place helps to promote directly, as well as through the not-for-profits that are tenants in their office space and other members of the community. With your permission, I'd like to share my screen to show the marquee in question here, because I think that really helps to. Okay, is that visible for you all?
We can see
Okay.
that.
Okay, perfect. So on the left-hand side is just some templates that were put together back when the marquee was first acquired by the applicants, just to show you the types of advertisements that would be available, or the events that would be advertised, utilizing the marquee here. Olga Dunn Dance Company, Great Barrington Project, just to name a few here. On the right-hand side, you can see on the north side of the church here is where we positioned the marquee, and it's important to note a few things. The first is that it's facing the street itself, and it's not it's set back far enough where it's not going to be a visual obstruction for people walking, cycling, or driving along Main Street, nor is it going to impede people walking on the sidewalk or utilizing the driveway between St. James Place and the office building immediately north at 342 Main Street. The electronic marquee itself, this actually was originally at the Clark Art Museum in Williamstown for a number of years. So that's who they actually purchased the marquee from. And just to scroll up here to give you the dimensions, the overall dimension for the sign is 4 feet 8 inches wide and 12 foot 6 inches tall. That's the total structure in and of itself. And then the illuminated sign, the area that you see highlighted here, that's just under 44 square feet. And the reason I call attention to that is ultimately later in your agenda this evening, you'll be making a recommendation to the planning board for a special permit under the sign regulations, for marquees specifically, there's a performance requirement that the illuminated display area can be no greater than 50 square feet. So I just wanted the select board to be aware that indeed we are beneath that maximum threshold under that set of regulations. One of the questions that came from the planning board review was just trying to understand what will be the timing of the change from, say, the first item that you see here to the next. Obviously, there's a certain amount of seasonality that comes from the events that will be at St. James Place here. So that will somewhat vary in terms of the number that they will have in a cycle. But generally speaking, we're anticipating there to be a 10 to 15 second point where you'll see one of the images or an image like this off on the left-hand side of my screen here. And then there'll be a slow transition from the first image that you see to the next. So it's not going to be a drastic flashing of lights on a constant basis here, but enough to ensure that if someone is parked either traveling northbound or southbound in front of or in proximity to the St. James Place, that through a traffic cycle, they'll have an opportunity to see a number of different events that are available at St. James Place. I first worked for Fred and Sally dating back to 2019 at their property at 342 Main Street. I saw that they had purchased the church. I saw that they had done a beautiful job and the property looked great, but I didn't have the first idea of all the different offerings that they had until I worked for them and understood what it is that we're doing. And I imagine there's probably a fair number of people who still believe this is a church. So the marquee is as much public education, frankly, as it is advertising. And again, it's to support not-for-profit agencies. St. James Place is also the home of the food project, the food pantry here. So really doing a great deal of good in the community here. And this marquee, with your permission and the eventual permission from the planning board here, will really allow us to showcase everything it is that this property has to offer. In my special permit application narrative, I did provide a point-by-point response for each of the special permit finding criteria. I'm happy to walk through those individually, or if the board wishes to ask any specific questions, we're happy to answer them. And I'd like to thank you all for your time this evening.
Thank you. Public comments, anyone to speak in favor or opposition? I'm not seeing anyone for questions or comments before we close the public hearing. Anyone?
There'll be discussion after we close.
Just got them on themselves, yeah. But if you have any questions, or if you want to.
I guess, so this is 4.5 feet tall, 4.5 feet wide, 12 feet tall, with less than 50 square feet of television area.
Illuminated area, correct, sir. Yes.
Okay. And the proper, and it's set back off the sidewalk, how far?
It's set back off the front property line, just over 29 feet, and it's set back off the side property line, just over 18.5 feet. I think the rendering here helps to show that it's kind of tucked up against the building, but again, trying to set it far back enough so it doesn't become a visual obstruction or hazard per se, but close enough to the street line where someone parked in a car would reasonably be able to look to the left or right and see this.
Sounds good.
Okay. Motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Have a second.
Second that.
Roll call vote, Eric.
Aye.
Garfield.
Aye.
Ben.
Aye.
And aye. Comments by the board or a motion?
Let's do a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second of the motion to approve?
I will second that. I have a few comments I'd like to make.
Of course. So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So, St. James Church is a beautiful place, and I'm very thankful that it's been restored to where it is. I do like how they have it tucked back. I am concerned about introducing 12-foot tall, 4-foot wide TV screens. I do understand that, St. James has done a lot of good for the town and all that, and I'm thankful that they are tucking it in the back. I guess I know these are by special permit and, I just want to be really cautious because I'm worried about the next one that shows up in front of us, so.
So, you and I think a lot alike. I had previously thought that I may not vote in favor of this, but now that it's tucked back, I can live with it. I would just caution anyone else who's gonna come before us with a special permit for one of these to wait. First of all, you better be as unique as St. James. And second of all, let's see how this looks on the street before we start putting more of these up. It's a special permit for a reason. And I agree with you. I think it's kind of big, but it's tucked back and I think this is a good trial. If it's going to be anywhere, this would be the place to have it. But I agree with everything you said. I wasn't sure I was going to support this, but I will support it at this point. Other board discussion? So we have a motion, a second, it's a roll call vote. Yes.
If I may, technically, the board should review the
Okay,
criteria.
you want to review those? Sure.
Even if you use what the applicant has set forth in their application, you know, there's 3 criteria for the village center overlay district and 6 for a special permit.
Okay.
And you know, you could review those and maybe agree on all of those that presented. That's fine. It's those findings that make this application unique and unique to the site, and which may go to allaying some of Mr. Gabriel's concerns about precedents and things like that. So,
Chris, do you want to just walk us through the 9?
Sure.
It's total of 9 actually. Right?
right, there's 3 required criteria in the village center overlay district that under 9.6.5. The first is improving village vitality and walkability. And the applicant states that this will make, the marquee will make numerous cultural and social offerings as well as events that support local nonprofit agencies available at St. James Place more visible to those passing by.
So once Chris reads it through, if anyone has any comments, just go right ahead.
Leave it as is.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Number 2, it promotes mixed use. St. James Place is already established as a mixed use, and the marquee will serve as a direct advertisement for the uses, events, and services available.
Agree with that.
And 3, promotes economic revitalization through the greater support and promotion of activities at St. James Place. The performance artists, as well as the organizations they support, will have greater financial impact to the town of Great Barrington, drawing more people to the town and supporting surrounding businesses and venues as a complement to their support of St. James Place.
Anyone have any comments?
Well, actually, I do have a comment. I'm not sure if it's in the right spot, but I'm concerned about the height as well. Can we do 10 feet, not 12?
It's already exists. It's the sign they were given as is.
Yes, it is an existing sign that was in use at the Clark Art Museum.
Keep them.
So there's 6 criteria under special permits. The first is social, economic, or community needs, which are served by the proposal. Marquee proposed will help provide public information and education to help further support the work of St. James Place and the numerous artists, culture institutions, and not-for-profit agencies whose work supports the residents of Great Barrington and Greater Southern Berkshire region. With greater public education for the thousands of motorists and pedestrians who pass by this property daily, they will have the opportunity to be better informed of the activities and amenities available for entertainment, as well as opportunities to support local organizations.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Number 2 is traffic flow and safety, including parking and loading. The marquee will be set back far enough from the street to not cause a safety issue for those walking, cycling, or driving past St. James Place, or utilizing driveways on abutting property. Adequacy of utilities and public services. The proposal will have a negligible impact on public utilities and services. neighborhood character and social structures. The marquee will only help to serve the neighborhood character and social structures by helping provide greater information to the public about all the opportunities available at St. James Place.
Right, I'm a little old fashioned, I'll admit it, I guess, and I guess. I have some future concerns, maybe the height and no one's coming in, but also. Don't like, no, but like, Barrington being all lit up everywhere we go. It,
So I had an issue with that. Actually, I didn't love the proposed bylaw when it went to town meeting, but it did go to town meeting in the past. So the voters have decided they don't mind it being lit up. Okay, right, that's,
Well, and I can ask, just to piggyback on that, it won't be on all night, how late will it be on? Anyone, have we gotten that far to think about that? I mean, I assume at 2 in the morning, I'm not gonna come through town and see your sign lit.
Well, I think that there's a capacity to lower the intensity of the light late at night, and it could just simply say in the place. Which we call our sort of our home page.
Okay,
There's some sort of.
Yeah.
Anything with that?
so it may be on at that hour. Is that correct? Just dimly lit.
yes, that's what they're saying.
Impacts on the natural environment. Project will not have any impacts on the natural environment.
okay.
6, potential fiscal impact. Marquee will help support the variability of St. James Place, as well as the artists and organizations who will be able to more clearly inform the public of the opportunities available for patrons to support them. While the proposal will help draw more patrons to St. James Place, that increase is not expected to have a detrimental impact on service.
So there's something I would like to add, partly because it will. It is unique to this, which is if the program is successful, it helps to ensure the preservation of the building. I'm not sure where we would put that. Any ideas? And I don't know if that'd be under number 1 in special permit.
Number 4.
Neighborhood characters, right, in other words, it would help to preserve this historic structure if the program is successful. I'll take it in number 4.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. You wanna, we have a motion,
We have a motion and a second. Chris, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think you've been through the criteria and you're all in agreement on the findings.
Anything else on the board?
do we need to vote on accepting the findings before we vote?
I think you're supposed to.
Okay.
You're proceeding directly.
So I have a motion to approve in a second. Any other discussion from the board? Roll call vote, Eric.
Aye.
Garfield.
Aye.
Pat, and it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
You're welcome. Now, we do have the recommendation to the planning board. Chris, do you want to just walk us through that?
It's a little strange. The sign bylaw requires that marquee signs be permitted by the planning board by special permit, so they'll go through a similar review as you did tonight. In order to review this application under the sign bylaw. So as with all special permits, different boards provide review and comment to the special permit granting authority. So that's what the applicant is looking for, your review and comment. Your vote on the previous item probably said it all, but if you put that into writing for the planning board, I'm sure they appreciate it as they do their review.
So make a motion that we send a positive recommendation and a copy of our findings to the planning board.
Do you have a second?
Second,
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. So part 2 is done.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. It's National Grid on it. That's
Yeah, no,
If there's anybody from National Grid on the line, just raise your hand, please.
I don't see either.
So National Grid, even if they show up, we're gonna scratch for tonight. I think there's enough questions anyways that we could do this another night. So let's go ahead with, let's do the real quick one, the Berkshire Regional Transit Advisory Representative.
So our current BRTA representative, John Morrell, recently stepped down.
Right.
So if any member of this board is interested in serving in that role, we could discuss that now. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and advertise the opportunity.
Anyone on this board interested in being on another committee? I'd say that with a smile on my face.
That's slightly decline.
Okay, advertise away.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay. Special permit application for the Great Barrington Affordable Housing Trust. Here, White Engineering with Central Berkshire Habitat for Humanity for a planned unit residential development of a new residential homes at 0 North Plain Road, map 26, lot 53A, for sections 3.1.4A9, 8.5, and 10.4 of the zoning bylaw.
Yeah, I need to recuse myself on this.
Do you have a motion to open the public hearing?
I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Do you have a second?
Second that.
Roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
Garfield, Lee,
Aye.
and I. Do you have an explanation of the project?
Good evening. Did I use this?
You don't have to. I think you can be picked up here.
Okay. My name is Fred Clark. I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and I'm just going to give a very brief introduction and then introduce the engineer and members of the Habitat who are here. The project is intended to help alleviate the critical shortage of affordable housing created by home ownership by creating ownership opportunities. All of the houses will be deed restricted, but no more than 100% of area median income, but most will be below 80% AMI. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, acting with the town, proposed the purchase of this parcel, and it was approved by town meeting in 2020. The trust then contracted for a feasibility study, which was favorably received, and subsequently we issued an RFP in October of 2020. Habitat for Humanity's proposal was accepted in January 2021 for the purchase and sale agreement following very shortly. The town subsequently applied for a MassWorks grant, which was awarded in 2 phases, $69,000 for planning and design, some survey work, and $3.2 million for infrastructure. In this case, infrastructure means extending the sewer line from Oak Avenue, water line into the property, roads, site drainage, site lighting, and if I've forgotten anything, the engineer will fill it in. During the CPA process, the process of applying for the money from the Community Preservation Act and the approval at town meeting, the community has weighed in with many comments. Habitat's had 2 in-person community engagement meetings in Housatonic and has plans for many more. Habitat has extensive experience with social media communications, and they've developed a very robust contact list. The trust is thrilled to have Habitat chosen for this project to bring their affordable housing expertise to Great Barrington. This is their first venture in South County, and we've been trying to get them for a number of years working. I want to introduce Brent White of White Engineering, who will do the main presentation. Carolyn Valley, of the CEO of Habitat for Humanity, is on the line, as well as Elizabeth Goodman, the attorney that Habitat is retained. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. And okay, well, I will proceed. Thank you again. For the record, my name is Brent White from White Engineering. On behalf of the applicant, I'd like to thank you all for your time again this evening. As stated, this special permit application is a planned unit residential development. The property itself on North Plain Road is a 7.25 acre site. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to share my screen to show the overall site plan as I walk through some of the details of the application here, and then we'll focus on some more specific details and happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Please do, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, is that visible for you all?
Yes.
Okay, so this shows the overall site boundaries here. As I mentioned, this is a 7.25 acre site. What you see here in the outer red perimeter is our boundary. To the right-hand side here, this is Route 41 North Plain Road. And just south at the bottom right-hand corner of our sheet is the intersection with Main Street for your reference. The property itself, as mentioned, it's a relatively, it's not a flat site. We do have some topographic change on the property here, but we spent a great deal of time working with the Habitat team in terms of trying to lay out the best opportunity to lay out home sites on the property here, as well as providing a safe ingress and egress from the property here. One of the first items that we identified as a part of the feasibility study that we had done back in 2020, when the Affordable Housing Trust was first considering this property, was just understanding the access to the lot itself. And where you see on my cursor right here is an existing, I'll call it a log road. That's probably a generous qualification for that here. It certainly served its purpose over the years for going in and cutting trees. However, we clearly identified that would not be a proper or safe access to the site. So what we've noted here and proposed is for our driveway to enter further along the northern portion of our frontage along North Plain Road. The topographic changes go from a lower elevation at the bottom of the screen and raised as they go along North Plain Road. So where we've shown our proposed curb cut, it still gives us some separation to our northern side property boundary. However, it provides drivers both entering and exiting the property to have proper sight distance to the north and south. As a part of this here too, as I mentioned, we spent a lot of time laying out the buildings here. Obviously, we do not have a perfectly square or perfectly rectangular property, and we have different sizes and styles of homes. Carolyn Valley, who's on the call, will certainly be able to better explain and certainly better detail than I. But we have a number of different home buyers that will ultimately be looking to buy in this neighborhood as a part of this development. So we wanted to provide a number of both smaller homes in the 2-bedroom size, as well as make available some homes in the 3 and 4 bedroom capacity here. So we've, as you can see by the varying sizes of footprints throughout the site here, we've tried to find the best relationship where we weren't necessarily cramming all of one type in one portion of the property here to give some diversity to that. Submitted with the application too was a number of different elevations of the architectural style of home. Again, we're trying not to propose a monolith of 30, the exact footprint, exact architectural detail facing the street type of homes here. So we've spent a great deal of time trying to do that based on input both from the neighborhood, frankly, as well as some of the outreach that Habitat for Humanity has had with their future home buyers. To take a step back from the property itself and understanding the process here, it's important to realize that as a home buyer through the Center for Habitat for Humanity, in order for them to be able to qualify to buy one of these homes, they need to be accepted into the program. They need to complete 400 hours of sweat equity, and they also need to take a series of financial education before they're even in a position to close on the home. So part of the decision in terms of which homes will be built first, or what the priority of how many 3-bedroom versus 2-bedroom, et cetera here. Part of that will be driven based on the pipeline of homeowners who submit applications to Habitat for Humanity and the Affordable Housing Trust, and how they progress through the homeowner selection process. So that just to give you some background here, and as a part of this initial special permit application, we first had a hearing with a discussion, I should say, with the planning board back in September of 2022 with a slightly different layout that had shown 20 units. And through that iteration here, we had some feedback really seeking to see a higher density on the property here. And the special permit application that we submitted last month obviously shows the 30 homes. And one of the changes, we've made a few changes to the layout since we filed that special permit. Mainly the homes on the northern portion of the road loop here. We've actually brought those closer to the road. Initially, those were set back even further. Part of that was just based on topography and decisions that we had made, but hearing from the planning board and looking to have a more uniform setback off of the road to the face of the house and the porches, we've brought in those units in here. One of the other changes that we've made to the site was the original application called for a sidewalk as a part of this road network here. And a good suggestion that was made by the chair of the planning board, Brandy Nelson, was to, based on the nature of the proximity of the homes to this green open space in the center of the road loop here, rather than worrying about crosswalks and sidewalks, that would be more advantageous for the road to simply be paved at a wider width. That would make snow plowing easier, less of a burden for the homeowners here, and ultimately a better outcome, and less sidewalks that would be an obligation for the homeowners association to maintain. As Mr. Clark stated in the introduction, we've through the great work of Mr. Rembold and Mr. Prahensky, we've secured over $3 million MassWorks grant that's going to construct the road, the water and sewer utilities for the site, as well as stormwater drainage. And through that, we've tried to maximize this. So at the conclusion, at the full build out of this project, ultimately the town of Great Barrington will plow and maintain all of the public road throughout this development here. And the eventual association that will be formed will provide access or maintenance, for the green open space and then between the homes and surrounding the homes, the center green on the property, plowing of the gravel driveways and parking areas that will be laid out throughout the site here. So we've really, through great collaboration, tried to lay this out in a way that will maximize the ability for the town of Great Barrington to maintain the public ways and minimize the obligations for our homeowners for maintaining the open spaces. As stated with respect to the service of the property here, we don't have municipal sewer directly in the frontage of our property, but through work with both the former and current DPW commissioner, I have verified that there is indeed proper adequate capacity for sanitary sewage to be collected on our property and pumped to a manhole at the intersection of Main and Oak Street. One of the other changes that we've made from the original special permit application last month was originally we had proposed a low pressure grinder sewage pump station. You'll find those in a number of different communities throughout Berkshire County. They are a great technology and they work well, and they make it easy, much easier, I should say, to add on to that system at a later date. Since we've submitted the application and we understand it's the preference of the Department of Public Works, since they will take over ownership of the sewage system once it's constructed here, they have asked us that through our construction documents, through the MassWorks process, that pump station be specified to be a high pressure pump that has the same type of configuration of other pump stations throughout the town of Great Barrington. So we have committed to certainly doing that upon receipt of the special permit. Doesn't change our ability to connect to the sewer. There's just some technical details that will be different with that type of setup as compared to the low pressure originally proposed. And surrounding neighborhoods would still have the ability to make a connection to that. Just some of the technical details would be done so in a different fashion. Obviously, storm drainage is another priority for this property here. Again, our topography, as you start from the north on the top of the sheet and work your way down, our topography goes from a high point almost to a low point in the center and then comes back up. So thankfully, we have a natural drainage pattern where all of our water is already somewhat naturally going towards the center of the property. And we have laid out a robust stormwater management system that includes a series of deep sump catch basins, proprietary storm scepter basins that really help further remove sediment, oil, grit, anything that would be in roadway stormwater runoff here, and cleans that. And then ultimately our method of disposal for that water is actually back into the ground, much like one might see on an on-site sewage disposal system here, where all the water is put back into the ground. And thankfully the soil conditions on the property are very porous, very sand and gravel type material. So that really lends itself to being able to manage the water in such a fashion. One of the other benefits that we feel with this proposed layout here is we're not proposing any sort of stormwater management, best management practice where we have a detention basin or a rain garden right on a property boundary or right on a property setback where if we had successive rain events, we'd be worried about any overflow of that to an abutting property. So great care has gone into designing a system here that's really self-contained and has a number of safety factors built into its design. And the planning board looked favorably on those design parameters as well. Obviously, with respect to the drinking water here, that was certainly the greatest point of feedback that we had during our discussion with the Board of Health last week here, and would like to take a few moments to elaborate on that. First, as a part of our preparing of the special permit application, I reviewed the 2021 report that was prepared by AECom, a consultant for the town of Great Barrington, that evaluated the Housatonic water system. And along with that, with the special permit application, submitted a request for information to the Housatonic Water Works of verifying that indeed they do have the proper pressure and volume to supply the project here. So that has been verified and submitted for the record through Mr. Rembold's office here. And obviously the AECom is a study that's already of record with the town of Great Barrington. There's no question there's been issues of water quality in the Housatonic Water Works system. As a part of our MassWorks grant, we had made an allocation for filtration systems to be installed in each of the homes to be constructed here that are very, very reliable, would have the ability to handle iron, manganese, the main constituents or problems that I would say is existing within this portion of the Housatonic water system in and of itself. I'm also aware of dating back to last summer, the pilot program that Housatonic Water Works has undertaken with the Mass DEP for new technology to manage the manganese, which is the greatest cause of the discoloration of the water throughout the mains there. Essentially, the chemistry of the influent water currently, based on going through the existing mains prior to treatment, was causing a great deal of the brown water that's been well noted throughout the public record here. However, that feel very encouraged that through the pilot program that they had, the results they've had to date over last summer, which is generally the peak period of time, that through another full year of testing here, that they're, by the time this project is truly shovel ready and we're putting homes in the ground here, we're hopeful certainly that the those issues with the waterworks have been resolved. However, as a part of our planning, we've accommodated that each home would be provided with a whole house filter, as well as some sort of treatment system here. Reverse osmosis is likely the most robust system that would be able to handle the influent constituency of water that would come to the property. There's a number of vendors, frankly, who had that technology available, some for as less as $2,000 for a single family home residential system. One of the questions that was raised that I just wanted to spend some time on right now here during the Board of Health hearing was the discussion of drilling wells, whether it's an individual well for a home or drilling a well that would become a public water supply well. First and foremost, a public water supply well would not be feasible for this property due to the strict setback requirements that those wells have. You're not allowed to have any proposed development within the Zone 1 protective radius of that well. Essentially, for this property, if we were to approach DEP, we'd get permission to drill a public water supply well right smack dab in the center of our property, and we wouldn't be allowed to build one house. So just by virtue of the setback regulations under the Mass DEP program, a public water supply would not be viable. It should also be noted that even the consideration of a shared well for 2 or 3 homes, even if the bedroom and head count stayed underneath the state regulation of a public water supply, which for record is 25 persons served for 60 days or more a year, we actually have a number of concerns under the building code, HOA management of that type of setup here, where the thought that first off, again, it's only a 7.25 acre site, and drilling a number of wells in a sand and gravel type of aquifer here. One, I would just be very concerned that after the second and third well goes online and has continually drawn water, that it's very possible that the wells being in such close proximity can start to run each other dry. Under the building code, the building commissioner has to authorize if a well is to be shared by more than one principal residence. And again, to satisfy the building commissioner's issues, generally speaking, the only times we've been able to do that are situations where we have a number of lakefront summer cottage where there's already deeded rights from one property to another, frankly, before the building code was even concerned about a single well serving multiple structures here. And lastly, with regards to the discussion of homes, maintenance obligations, financial monthly obligations here, a private well, or frankly being a part of a small intercommunity shared well system here, would frankly propose a number of constructability issues, liability issues. I just wanted to be very clear with the board here that we certainly spent a great deal of time understanding the nature of what needs to be done to satisfy what's the issues with the current Housatonic waterworks. And that's still, in this case here, it's our opinion that even through the use of on-site treatment and that treatment system requiring a changing of filters over periods of time, that is still a superior option. The fact that there is a public water supply available to us in North Plain Road. So I just, we submitted the application. We've made reference to the AECom report, and I know you received feedback from the Board of Health. So I thought it was important to just understand, one, the thought process that we all went through as a development team for the last few years. But again, with the pilot study that's currently underway through whose Tonic Water Works, as well as understanding that we have the ability to put filtration systems in here, we're hopeful that, again, really by the time we break ground, that is a moot point, or certainly not the level of concern that it is currently. Traffic, we touched briefly already on the site layout here. Obviously, there's thousands of vehicle trips per day along North Plain Road here. It's a well-traveled road. Since the time of our initial feasibility study in 2020, obviously there's now, when we're to drive up and down the road, there are solar-powered speed signs that they work. They report your speed, and if you're going too fast, they certainly let you know that here. So we feel that that is actually an improvement. We were pleased to see that the town undertook, separate and aside from this project here, as an improvement to slow traffic in that area here, which only makes the sight distance conditions even better than they were prior to the installation of those speed signs. We do have a approximately 5% increase in the total traffic, assuming all 30 homes are built out here. So while obviously it is an increase in traffic here based upon the layout of the roads, the intersections, what have you here, it's still a relatively low volume of traffic on that road. And we feel comfortable with the placement of our driveway here, that people will be able to enter and exit the property safely. Environmental conditions. So as a part of the special permit process, we did submit this to the Conservation Commission. And just to summarize for the record here, there is no wetland resource areas defined by the Wetlands Protection Act on this property, and that includes bordering vegetated wetlands, a 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland, a 200-foot riverfront area, 100-year floodplain. It's also important to note that this property is not within the town's Scenic Mountains Act jurisdiction, nor is it part of any of the defined water quality protection overlay districts. Much further to the west is the Williams River. However, we are still outside of the surface protection zone for that here. So thankfully, and there's no areas of critical environmental concern, nor is there mapped priority or estimated habitats through the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. So for all those reasons, the Conservation Commission has determined that there's nothing, no permit that's required by them here, and they did not have any further comment on the application itself. I think with that, I would like to turn it over to Attorney Goodman or Carolyn, who may wish to elaborate further on the ownership structure as well as our homeowners here. We're happy to take any questions that you have, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, if you'd like to start on the ownership structure, that would be great.
Sure. So one possibility that we've been considering for this site is to have a condominium. So that condominium association could manage the common areas and arrange for maintenance and snow removal on the shared driveways and on all the driveways, maintain there's a guest parking area. There's various matters that a condominium association could control. That would be my preferred method. There may be some concerns about lending through the USDA. We're investigating that. So if for some reason that was determined not to be suitable, then we would just have to set up a regular homeowners association. I prefer the condominium association also because if there's a failure to pay common area fees, there's an automatic process for a lien. And it just seems easier to manage under the, Commonwealth's condominium scheme. But either way, there'll be an association with participation from the homeowners to run the common areas. Are there any questions about that?
We'll take questions at the end. Let's just go through the whole presentation. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having us. So the income ranges that we're going to be looking at is 60 to 100% AMI, and that means the lowest range is 56,490 to 94,150. That's total family income. What we're seeing in Great Barrington in particular is there is no 3 or 4 bedroom rentals at all. So this opportunity for home ownership at less than what you could pay for renting a studio or a 1 bedroom, we believe is going to help greatly with the housing crisis that we have in Berkshire County in particular. And we are already planning out our phases, and we think that we're going to do them starting with the rear end of the property. So if you're looking at Brent's slide, it would be the back part of the outer long rim of the roadway. Our hope is that while they're putting in the infrastructure, we'll be able to pour the first foundations around that outer circle. So there would be 6 in that grouping, and we'll be opening up the lottery system before that. And then we'll build out, so it'll be 6, 8, 8, and ultimately 8 more. We're going to use a combination of panelized homes and modular so that we can minimize the construction time that it takes to build, as well as the inconvenience on the neighborhoods. And I think that's about it. I can answer any questions you might have about the home ownership structure or who will be living there.
Carolyn, I'm not sure that the selectmen understand what you meant by lottery. Can you just describe very briefly the homeowner construction and selection process with affordable housing involved? Yeah.
So when the Department of Housing and Community Development has restricted units to get on the subsidized housing inventory, which is something that the town of Great Barrington would like to do, we have to go through the state and submit applications to be able to have an equal opportunity lottery so that people have an equal chance to be able to purchase a home at a reduced cost in this development. It also has an automatic resale value built in so that the benefit that the homeowners get, you do get wealth generation, but it stays in perpetuity so that this will always be able to be affordable for the town of people living in the town of Housatonic.
Right. It's always tied to the AMI for resale.
Correct, for resale.
Permanently. And then, so there's a method of creating the lottery. The state approves the process, and then Habitat runs the process and selects the eligible homeowner. And then they work with them to make sure the unit has the right bedrooms and is the suitable unit for them to build. So that's why we don't know exactly until the lottery system is done how many sized units. Right, Carolyn, you may adjust the
Correct.
unit. Okay.
Yeah, we might have to adjust the units based on who applies.
I have a couple questions.
So we're not doing questions.
Okay, then I don't have any.
That's not how this works. So first,
And Mr.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. I was just going to say, I do have I wanted to make sure my team had a chance to make their initial comments. I do have from the special permit application, our summary, our position with respect to the special permit findings, and I'm happy to review those as a part of my presentation this time, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be terrific.
Perfect. So again, in this case here, under 10.4 for special permits, the number of findings need to be made here. And the first is with respect to social, economic, or community needs which are served by the proposal. I think we've all well stated here the need for affordable, attainable workforce housing within the town of Great Barrington here, and this will provide up to 30 units to provide that. The second is with respect to traffic flow, safety, including parking and loading. Again, we've gone through great efforts to provide a safe access to the property here, provide each homeowner with the ability to have their own individual parking space, as well as making accommodations for some guest overflow parking here, so we don't have an issue of guests parking on the roadway here and inhibiting the ability for emergency apparatus to maneuver through the property here. The fire chief has reviewed the plan and was satisfied with respect to our road layout and network here. And again, the one change that we made to that from the original application was making the road wider, eliminating 4 feet of sidewalk and making this loop 22 feet wide. And then this green portion of grass right here, that was just a recommendation to reduce the amount of overall pavement in this area here, but a fire truck would still have the ability to maneuver over that. So we're very comfortable that we're able to provide more than ample parking for, and we had the same issue, the same concern was raised when I represented Central Berkshire Habitat for Humanity for their special permit for what's known as the Gordon Demi Village on the southeast side of Pittsfield. Again, we had, in that case, that was under the city of Pittsfield zoning, that was a common driveway and just a more appropriate way for us to permit that road. But we worked closely with the fire department to ensure we had a proper paved width and shoulder to ensure overall width, as well as the number of parking spaces dedicated to each individual unit owner here. And that's worked out well since that's been built out. Obviously, and with respect to loading zones, obviously it's not a commercial entity here, so we don't have any actual designated loading zones on the property itself. Adequacy of utilities and other public services. Again, we've already received feedback from the Department of Public Works confirming the sewage capacity. We've received feedback from the Housatonic Water Works identifying that they have the capacity. And again, we feel with the filtration units we'll provide to our homeowners, as well as the progress being made. I understand the select board probably has more information than almost anyone besides the Housatonic Water Works on the nature of their progress with regards to the piloting system here. But we're confident that with continued success here, that with our development here, that we will not be a burden on the water system, but we already know we have the capacity, and through our connection to here, that will not cause a quality issue for any of our surrounding neighbors once this is built out. Neighborhood character and social structures is a fourth finding. And again, as we looked at this property here, obviously we've gone back and forth from the original proposed density to what you see before us now here. And as we look at our surrounding communities to the north and south, our density is almost in the middle here. So there's some portions that have a higher density of homes, and some to the south that have more land mass per home here. But we feel this is in line and frankly, with respect to the purpose for allowing a PERD to provide us a way to maximize the number of units allowed on the property based on the layout of the site itself. And through our homeowners organization, still with details to be finalized here, we're setting our homeowners up for success. And I just want to reiterate that they are homeowners. They will own these homes. These are not rental units. Many of our homeowners come from a rental situation where they may be in a duplex or triplex. They may very well be in a 20 or 30 unit building where the only thing that they have for separation from their neighbors is one interior wall and a 4-inch strip of paint in the parking lot between their car and the neighbor's parking spot. So this really goes to great lengths to certainly improve their quality of life and be more consistent with the surrounding neighborhood along North Plain Road. Impacts on natural environment. And again, we first off, we're not altering or working within any wetland resource area or its buffer zone here. So just by virtue of trying to find properties that are not impeding on those resource areas is a priority that we look for whenever we're doing feasibility, especially for something of this size and scale here. So the fact that this was available and not impeding on any state or town designated resource areas, scenic, environmental, wetlands, or water quality, we're very pleased with that here. Well, again, we've gone through great lengths to design a stormwater management system that has a great deal of resiliency. One of the things that we've seen as a part of stormwater management design was, especially when I was an undergraduate, we always looked at that 100-year storm, 24-hour event. So, when I graduated college, it was approximately 6.5 inches in 24 hours was the definition of a 100-year storm in Southern Berkshire County. Now that same definition, the 100-year, it's a statistic. It's a 1% probability. That's now approaching 8 inches of rain in a 24-hour event. And frankly, what we're finding, you've all seen and we've seen throughout Berkshire County here is it's not the 100-year 24-hour storm event that's the most catastrophic. It's the 100-year 2-hour event that drops 3 inches of rain in a series of an hour or 2 hours that causes the most washout, greatest flash flooding in neighborhoods here. So again, our system, we can store inches of rainfall through just our subsurface infiltration bed before we have to account for one drop of water actually being infiltrated into the ground or the storage of water that we have in our catch basin network throughout the road and the neighborhood here. So a great deal of resiliency has been put into the design of this and obviously providing a natural screening buffer around our entire property boundaries on the north, west, and south side here. We've consolidated the development as close to the center of the property as we can while still providing a safe enough road for a fire apparatus to maneuver through the property, as well as frankly provide the required density. And lastly, the sixth finding here is with respect to potential fiscal impact. including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. Well, first off, this is going to allow 30 new homeowners to the town of Great Barrington. It may very well be a young professional just starting at work. It may be a family of 4. It may be even more. But we were hoping to see a diversity of homeowners here. Again, all these homes, these will go on the tax rolls, contributing to the town and contributing to the Housatonic Waterworks as paying customers as well. So we feel that overall here, by providing 30 new homes that our homeowners will not only be able to qualify for, but they'll be able to stay into, grow into, and build equity for their family. And with that, unless any of my teammates have anything else to add, I think this will conclude our initial presentation, and thank you again.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So next is public comments. Each has 3 minutes to speak in favor or opposition. And I will take it from in-house and then alternate with those who are available virtually. So just raise your hand virtually or come to the podium. Just come to the podium, state your name and address. No, you need to come to the podium because of the microphone. They won't be able to hear you.
I'm Barbara Bailey, 9 Linda Lane. I'm a little concerned about the number of houses that have been proposed. When we met with Habitat back in August, we were told 20. We have maps that show 20 units. My husband and I built back in 62. The road, Linda Lane, stopped right in front of our house. And eventually over the years, the neighborhood grew and it maintained friendliness, calmness, and safety throughout the years. And now we're proposing 30 units in one small area. How's that going to affect the integrity of the neighborhood, which I think was built into the master plan? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Marcus, anyone online?
We have one hand up.
Okay, go ahead with that.
Okay. Jan?
Yeah,
non-electric here.
Yeah. Name-
253
name and
Long
address,
Pond.
address. Thanks. Jim.
I just had a few questions about the waterworks issue in terms of, has the town looked at the local fire hydrants to see what kind of pressures they have? And have you surveyed the local water issues from the neighborhood? And in doing so, is it a high risk, low risk area for having discolored water? And then when the presenter was talking about mitigation systems for the discolored water, those homeowners are going to find that A, it costs a lot to set up a system, and 2, the filters don't come cheap. So it seems that we're doing a lot of, we hope this, we hope that, but I would hope that the town would protect itself financially at least, and not be left holding the bag for something where I'm assuming the original permit that talked about water availability was for the 19 or 20 homes, not 30. And I think it'd be fair to let all the buyers know that this is a very real issue in terms of perhaps needing to replace filters weekly, monthly, or whatever the case may be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in house? Come on up there. Don't be shy.
Yeah, that's me, I'm shy.
I knew you were.
James Bailey, Housatonic. First of all, Carolyn, I know reading a lot of this, it says there was a lot of input from abutters in the community. The input from the abutters in the community ended in August. There had been no prior or any engagements with the community, the abutters, after August. When we left that hearing or that informal session, we were told 20 homes. And I think Garfield can attest to this. This neighborhood stood up and welcomed Habitat. It was the lesser of the two evils we could choose. Home ownership, that's what's in that neighborhood. That's what the neighborhood wanted. They fought for Habitat. Habitat said, we're gonna put 14 to 20 homes in. The map we saw was 20 homes, 20 homes. Lo and behold, here we are today, 30 houses. And just to give you some perspective, you can't see it because they don't illustrate it. This is a 7-acre lot. On a 30-acre area, there's 30 homes in that neighborhood. 30 homes sit on 30 acres. 30 homes sit on 7 acres. How is that even fit in with the rest of the neighborhood? I mean, I'm trying to do the math. There's no developer, Dan Alden will tell you, could touch that lot and make it feasible, make it profitable. Town of Great Barrington, through who knows how, managed to acquire the property and said, hey, we can squeeze 30 homes in it, 20 homes in it. This is wrong. This is wrong for the neighborhood. The idea of home ownership, the idea of people being able to afford homes, that's great. This is a working class community. This is to help the working class people, correct, Mr. Clark? How is that helping the working class? When you're adding to something, and I heard this said, this was, these are starter homes. Homes that people can move on from. My mom, that's her forever home. There's 10 forever homes that I know of, 10 families in that neighborhood. And we're gonna start 30 starter homes? The other question I have and concern, besides the water, and he never mentioned, again, the HAA5 and whether a filtration system can actually remove that. I mean, that's concerning. Nobody's done any studies to determine the volume. Will the increased flow through the pipes, what will that do down the line? That's a main. That main line travels down Route 41 from where it leaves the connection by Division Street. So that feeds that entire side of Housatonic. Just so everybody knows. But what I don't understand is why we sit here and look at helping the working man when we turn a blind eye to it, when we're stuffing something like that, that obviously does not fit in that neighborhood. 20 homes. Everybody in this room sat there and listened to the 20 homes. They were accepting of it. Now all of a sudden, because the planning board, I want to ask Carolyn if she was comfortable with the 20 homes. That's what I want to know. Was Habitat comfortable with 20 homes?
I will ask that question.
Thank
for
you.
So
Thank you for your time.
Anyone else? Go right ahead. Anyone online?
We have 3 others.
Okay, go first online, and then you'll be next.
Hi,
Yeah, you're gonna be next. I'm just gonna go online. Sorry.
You want me?
No, you stay right there. That's fine. You're fine.
Michelle, your mic's open.
All right, can you hear me?
We can.
All right, thank you. Michelle LeBaire, 70 Division Street. Once upon a time, I went to a meeting where there was the 20 homes, and a member of the committee wanted to increase it to 40. And it was an in-person meeting. And I said, if you do that, I will leave this meeting and go up to the Linda Lane neighborhood and knock on every door and let them know. And as a matter of fact, the next day, I believe a member resigned from that committee because he was so upset because I was vocal about it. In any event, I talked to people in the neighborhood. I had family who lived in that neighborhood, 2 uncles who actually built houses there right after World War II. So very familiar. And of course, everybody knows Old Maids. And everybody seemed accepting of 20 houses. Then I pick up a news story and I see it's been bumped up to 30. I immediately contacted a few people up in the neighborhood and said, are you aware of this? Did I miss a meeting? No one was aware of it. That being said, this leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I was all, with the neighborhood was content with the 20. I was, okay, it looks like everything's calmed down, everybody's good. But this really, I'm sorry for lack of a better word, dirty business. And the thing about affordable housing, I said it at one meeting, I've said it in more than one meeting. You don't take away the enjoyment of property from other people in the name of affordable housing. You were in a neighborhood where they said, okay, we're good with the 20 home ownership buildings. And under the table, you shoved in 10 more. That is just wrong. I'm looking at the plan, looks like a city in the middle of this little neighborhood. Shame on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Go right ahead, name and address.
My name is Eileen Anderson and I own number 7 Linda Lane. My concern was when Carolyn was talking, she said that depending on who shows up for the houses, that the houses could change. So I'm concerned if all the people that showed up wanted 4-bedroom houses and they have the lot set for 30 places for those houses, could technically they put in 34-bedroom large houses, or are they gonna stay within the plan that they're proposing? I just feel like if they're kind of already not being very specific about what, where, how, and why, then it makes us feel a little uneasy as to what's gonna happen. Because if there's a 2-bedroom house that's like a split level behind my house, I have a visual, I can plant a big tree, you know, I'm okay. But if you're gonna put a 4-bedroom larger size house, switch up where it ends up being in that lot, then that's what is kind of concerning for me.
That's on my list of questions. to ask.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. I'm glad you brought it up. Who's next? Just from National Grid knows, we called you twice when you weren't here. So I don't know if we'll get to you tonight. We've meeting started at 6. So
Alan, Laura.
we'll see how long this takes. You want to stay? Go ahead.
Alan, Laura, your mic's open.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear us? Thank you.
We can.
Alan Laura DuPont, 5 Comstock Lane. We are abutters to this property and this project. We have similar concerns as Mrs. Bailey and others have spoken. As abutters, we were invited to a meeting on August 11th of 2020 at the Housatonic Realty Office hosted by Habitat for Humanity. And we were presented with a plan for 19 single level units at that time. And we're wondering what happened to that plan that was presented to us as abutters on August 11th to today, where we're now seeing 30 units on the same property. Also wondering if these units in the proposal this evening are 1-story units or are they 2-story units? And we are also wondering what kind of consideration has been taken into place regarding some natural boundaries to the property. Because we were also told on August 11th that they would be single units, 19 single units, single level units, I should say. And now we're looking at, looks like 2-story units. So a lot has changed since August 11th without any communication with the abutters. And we're wondering why that's happened and when that's happened. And we're also curious to know more about the natural boundaries that we were promised at some of the initial meetings in terms of putting in some foliage and things like that to make a natural boundary between the current residents and these new projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, come on up.
Dan Bailey, 207 North Street, Housatonic. My question would be along the lines of construction and timeframe. Carolyn mentioned this in phases. Does that mean that the people here would be living next to an active construction site for 5, 10, 15, 20 years? How long? I know for a fact that they Habitat has 3 duplexes on Gordon Street in Pittsfield that's been 5 years and still not completed. So how long is this gonna take? It all goes to really about the character of the neighborhood. You know, it's, nobody's against affordable housing. I think we've all made that clear. Habitat is a great organization. I think everybody will agree with that too. I think we just have to look at you have to look at the scope of this. And is there a way we can actually come to a better census that would really keep in the fitting of the neighborhood, keep the main objective, which is to get affordable housing in there, and yet, solve all the other problems, deal with all the other problems rather, like the water situation and wells, the sewer and infrastructure and everything else too. But those are my comments.
Thank you, Dan. Online, one more?
One more. Teresa, your mic is open.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Jim, actually.
Thank you, we can hear you.
Okay. Hi, this is Jim Anderson. We're at 15 Wyandotte Street. And I agree with Michelle and other people about the amount, because I was at the meeting also. And, we thought, I was very skeptical going into the meeting. And then when she said, well, there'll be 20, roughly 20 houses, and laid them out. And I said, well, Habitat for Humanity, and that doesn't look all that bad. I was kind of pretty much for it. But then now I'm back to being very skeptical again. And one of the reasons is if you have, let's say, at least 30 kids in that neighborhood trying to get into town, at one point or another, there's no sidewalks or any way to get from that development onto Main Street and Housatonic. So that's just another thing I wanted to add on top of my concern with the increase in houses, which I'm against. I was pretty happy with the initial proposal that we saw down in at the realty office. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Yes.
Come on up.
No.
I'm Kathy Brandt, 393 North Plain Road, and I just want to say, agreeing with everything that's been said here, I feel like we've been bamboozled. We all went to that meeting, quite a few of us, on August 11th. We saw, I have the photo here of the 20 homes. Great, it was Habitat taking on the project. They made it clear in the beginning that, gee, it could be somebody much worse, and it could be a big disaster of a build. So I'm happy that Habitat took it on, but I feel we've been lied to, and I can't believe that it's now to 30 homes when it was going to be 20 homes, and we all were in agreement with it. And Carolyn was very positive about, yeah, this is the way it's going to be. This is how it's going to look. And now we're back to 30 homes. And God forbid if it looks anything like what's down on South Main Street. That is a travesty to this town. And if that kind of ends up looking like that, what are you gonna all say about what you've done to this community? Sure, we all need homes, but gee, you're buying up properties left and right, and 30 homes on 7 acres with bad water to boot, and there's really no solution for that water that I can see coming forward. And isn't there the problem with the pressure of the fire hydrants as well? How are you gonna, I don't know, I just don't see how it's feasible, especially with the water. You people that live in Great Barrington, you might not realize how dirty the water is and how the scum comes into our homes and what it's doing to our filtration systems and our heaters and everything else. I really feel bamboozled by this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have another hand up.
Yeah, okay.
James, your mic is open.
Hi, good evening, board. This is James Garzone, 84 North Plain Road. I just want to say that because I attend a lot of these meetings, I don't want to put the onus on the select board. If the community has listened to the planning board meetings, they would have noticed the change where Habitat Humanity came with one plan. There was discussions that the planning board wanted perhaps a little bit more, so Habitat Humanity spent the time and energy to change the plans to meet those requirements. So if the community feels that there's too many, perhaps they should be attending the planning board meetings when this was being discussed, because at this point, the select board is getting this after the fact, and I want to defend the select board. That's not them pushing it. Just go to the planning board meetings and make your comments and your suggestions at that point. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? So I'm gonna close off public comment. And I'm gonna start with the first question, and then I'll let the rest of the board will alternate, because there's a lot of questions here. Carolyn, I'm gonna ask the $54 million question. And that'll be, is Habitat comfortable with the 30 units? Why were the 30 changed? And what kind of communication was made to the neighbors after there was an implicit promise that it was going to be 20 units? So I'll let you go with that to start with.
Okay, thank you. So as Mr. Garso just said, when we went to the planning commission, we had 20 units on our plan. They felt strongly that they would like to see 40. And we know what the need is for housing. 1 in 6 people are paying more than 50% of their income on housing right now. So we know there is a need. And I was not super comfortable going to 30, but I also know that we need to house people and we need to keep this community with, you know, policemen and nurses and all of the people that make the fabric of our community. So I said, okay, go ahead and try to see how you can put it in at 30. So that's why we're at where we are right now. And I think Brent just finished the plans maybe a week ago, maybe a little bit longer. And that's where we're at.
And just to kind of carry on that, it was, again, understanding the nature of the property, just its location, proximity to the neighbors, the configuration of the lot here. You know, obviously I appear before the select board on a somewhat regular basis and familiar with the overall zoning process here. And I value the planning board's input and understand that their feedback weighs heavily whenever a product is up for deliberation. And I viewed it as an engineer. My goal, my primary charge was to find a way to show how could you fit 30 units on the site, meet the minimum requirements for the PERD with respect to open space, which we far exceed. That is certainly very important. You know, thankfully the utilities with regards to the sewer and drainage were very straightforward for the property. With regards to the waterworks here, I want to, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, I'd like to just respond to a few comments that were made in the public that I think would maybe hopefully alleviate or minimize some questions that the board may have. With regards to water capacity, so both the AECOM study and the feedback from the waterworks as of February, or maybe it was, yes, it was February of this year. First off, it was based on the 30 homes, and the reports clearly state that there's adequate pressure for the development here. That was one of the things that we looked at during our initial feasibility study and confirmed. Shortly after we were first retained in 2021 is when the AECOM study was finished, and that really served as an extra verification of the work that we had done in 2020 based on what was available to say that there is a volume of water there. If we had true pressure issues, to be honest, the results of the initial feasibility study that I provided the Affordable Housing Trust or any of the work that we would have done over the last 2 years would have likely resulted in a much further scale back plan than what you have. So it's with a number of different people verifying that capacity does indeed exist. And with regards to the quality issues, we're certainly not ones to dispute that there's issues right now. But again, I think it's important to understand the current progressions that are happening, the studying of what's actually happening, that the halicylic acid, that's a byproduct of overchlorination of trying to solve the initial problem at the influent source water to the water distribution. I'm kind of from what's been told to me and what the DEP has seen so far and the results that have occurred here with a more further implementation and the ability to keep the test pilot of what's going on there now, that we won't continue to have the issues that have existed. We don't own the Housatonic Waterworks. We're not in control of the timing or when the Mass Department of Environmental Protection will give them a full permanent approval to utilize that treatment technology. So I don't want to overstate things that will happen, but based on everything that's happened, I'd say in the last 6 to 8 months, we're confident that that's more progress than I've seen since we first started looking at this project in April of 2020, when the Affordable Housing Trust was first truly looking at this property. One of the other questions that was asked just with regards to landscape here. So we do have minimum screening requirements and buffer plantings. So what you see on, is my site plan still visible for you all?
Yes.
Okay. So this green band right here, we've proposed to plant at a minimum 8 foot tall at the time of planting evergreen trees. And we've tried to space them in a way where, we run into the situation a great deal. You want to plant as much as you can immediately to provide as much of the screen as possible. It looks good to a zoning board. It looks good to a planning or conservation commission. You plant plants too close together and then they die off and you actually end up having a worse outcome here. So we've tried to plant tall enough trees that will have room to grow so that as they're planted, we have the ability for them to mature. One of the things that we have in our control through the MassWorks process is the nice thing is that a lot of the costs for a homeowner here, the MassWorks is doing a great deal to help Habitat keep the overall cost of this project down. One of the things that is within our control, and I might even suggest if the board were to consider approving this and issuing special conditions, ultimately upon receipt of a special permit and clear of appeals, the next step for my office is to work with Mr. Prohensky and Rembold with the Affordable Housing Trust to actually put together a construction bid document set to go out to bid. The nice thing is we plan to get the bulldozers come in, essentially shape the site, start building the roads, start putting in the drainage sewer and all of that other things. And then at a certain point, we're going to have relatively flat, buildable sites that Habitat will come in and build the homes. And just based on the topography and the order of a sequence of events, pardon me, for construction, I could very easily suggest that we consider planting those evergreen trees upon the initial stabilization of the initial site grading of the property to, again, during the construction. We can't commit to exactly what that timeline will be. Obviously, it's going to be a 2024 construction of the MassWorks. That needs to happen first for the site to take shape. But I would feel very comfortable suggesting that the board consider that upon initial completion of site grading, that the landscape buffer plants be planted and protected with whether it's burlap or an additional layer of silt fence here, so that mature vegetation that can begin to establish while we're building the site out here. I think that's something that's in our control and would provide, in my view, a net benefit to the neighbors by starting that growth process while we are finishing, building the actual infrastructure, building the homes themselves. Sorry, I had one other point I just wanted to put out there, so it's
Sure.
Oh, and that's a minimum. Again, what we've shown here, as a part of a special permit, we have to do everything that's on this plan here. I know through our work at the Gordon and Demi site, the COVID pandemic unfortunately dampened some of the prospects that we had here. But as a part of that project, that was actually within the 200-foot riverfront area of the Housatonic East Branch of the Housatonic River. So that project did have an order of conditions with that. In order to permit that site, we actually had to find another off-site location to basically Habitat was given a property. We dug up an old paved parking lot and replanted an entire forested area here with native wetland plants. We got some seed mixes from New England wetland plants out of the Pioneer Valley here. And we now have, I think this is the second or going into its third growing season of just an old parking lot that was returned to a meadow. So our goal would be to collaborate with some of the high school agricultural programs to supplement the landscape. The minimum, the 8-foot tall trees, those need to be done under the MassWorks. Those are going to be, larger than maybe what students might be able to handle, but to provide a diversity of shrubbery and natural grasses to comprise that vegetative buffer here, so it doesn't feel like a typical commercial development with a solid 6-foot stockade fence with some evergreen shrubs thrown in front of it here, and really try and give it more of a natural feel. And at the end of the day, provide probably a greater screen than exists currently based on the health of some of those trees around the perimeter of our work area. So I just wanted to at least try and clarify some of those points here. And again, just to really reiterate with the fact that, again, that neighborhood meeting occurred in August of last year. And it was within a month, in September, we appeared before the planning board and received some very forceful commentary with regards to density and the number of units that we would need to be showing in order to have the support of the planning board. And thankfully, Mr. Clark and the trust, working with us in Habitat, came up with a scheme that allowed us to do that. And the last point that I wanted to identify was just the style of homes here. Again, these are in the application, but again, we have a diversity of style of homes to be constructed. Some are single story, some are 2-story. I think the intention, and Carolyn can speak to this in greater detail, the intention was always to have them as single family units here, not to have a duplex per se. But again, with the idea that we don't have every house looking exactly the same front facade, the same porch, the same garage, whatever that may be here, that we have a diversity of units that would be available. And again, to the point of, well, you're saying 2 bedrooms or you're saying 4 bedrooms. We wanted to show, one, that we can have a diversity of houses on this property here. If we built all 2 bedrooms, we potentially could fit more. I don't think that's the right call for this site, but obviously what we've shown here is that to try and come in and build 34 bedroom homes would be very challenging at best, to provide the homes, the space between the homes that we need for the PURB requirements, for each of the homes to have their own driveway, still have the parking areas, manage the stormwater, et cetera here. So really it was our best faith effort to show an attempt to diversify the types of homes that are built on this property here, and also give us the flexibility to say, we don't know necessarily who the homeowners will be. This is not a typical commercial real estate development here, and we're trying to do so, and we're provide enough information in the application here to show what this will and likely will look like, but understanding that there may need to be some flexibility with regards to how many homes are built at first, or in terms of the sequencing, how many of them will be 3 or 4 bedroom. Admittedly, at this time, we don't know, and we'd rather be upfront about that than give you a number, and then we get under construction and realize that we actually have more 2-bedroom homeowners that are going to qualify and be able to buy these homes. That's a very important part of this being a viable project. So I've gone on probably too long, but I thank you, and I believe Attorney Goodman has a few things to say as well.
Could I just add one thing? I'm sorry. Some of the pictures have a garage. None of our units will have garages.
I just wanted to comment, if I could, and have Brent assist. The zoning density for this project does not exceed what is allowable in the zone. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
So that's another reason why it makes sense that 30 is an allowed amount, because you have enough open space under your bylaw, but you also, if you took it and divided each one, you would have the appropriate density. So
I was gonna let the other select board members start asking questions, but let me make one comment. I have no doubt that what the planning board has suggested, I'll use that with air quotes, it is allowable and maybe advantageous. I also know that what was discussed with the neighbors is different than that. And a promise is a promise. It should have gone back to the neighbors. And select board is the permit granting authority. So maybe we should have been involved in that too. As far as I know, the planning board isn't. So I know they make a recommendation, but ultimately our name is on the line here. So Attorney Goodman, I don't doubt that it's legal. I just wonder how ethical it is to come back with 30 instead of 20 after you've had a discussion with the neighbors and not coming back to them with a new plan.
I'd like to echo the same.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to echo the same thing as Stephen said, and I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus. We did state 20. That was our proposal. We were fine with it. We weren't told. I don't ever remember the planning board coming to us and discussing this with us, or saying, hey, now we're gonna put 30. So this is all kind of new, and I feel we're being dishonest to the people, because I thought this had been discussed. We had worked a lot and hard with the people whose time they're upset with at first. We apologize for not involving them. We tried to get them involved. We told them this is what's going to happen. Now it looks like something else is happening, and quite frankly, I don't like the way it makes me look.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I echo Garfield and Steve and the residents here that have spoken. For me, I feel it's a bit of a bait and switch. I feel that, there's a lot of input involved, and the residents have expressed what their views were, and that 20 seemed to be the number. And I really feel like we're doing a disservice to the trust that had been built. And as Steve said, we're the special permit and granting authority, and, you know, it's our name on this. And I don't feel good about this. You know, I'm an advocate of affordable housing. I absolutely think that there is a need, but to, you know, to force a certain amount of houses into a small area just because we have this dire need, I don't feel good about that. And I really respect the residents right now, and I feel that we owe it to them to keep the promise, so.
Go ahead.
And as the Affordable Housing Trust Chair, Fred Park, 388 Park Street in Housatonic. The density that we're talking about is very similar to central Housatonic, the areas of Hartford, Maine, Pleasant, those kinds of areas. We're talking about 26 buildings on about 6.5 acres, roughly about a quarter acre per lot. That's more similar. Part of the density has to do with creating community, creating neighborhood, creating kind of a sense of place, of identity, of having these neighbors all, you know, around a central green where they can gather and have events.
Mr. Chair, point of order. You closed the public hearing.
No, I did not close the public hearing. I did not close the public hearing. I will rule you out of order first. He asked a question. I did not close the public hearing. So
You closed, you closed.
a public comment. He's not the public. He is representing the Affordable Housing
Okay,
Trust.
thank you,
Yeah.
that was my,
Go right ahead.
thank you.
Those are basically you know, as to the transition from the possible units that we were going to build to the possible. I agree with Carolyn, the need is very strong, the need is very strong. That's why the Housing Trust has had several meetings and discussed whether it was appropriate to increase the density from 20 to 30. We did have those meetings have been public. Those meetings have been advertised and posted, and well, you know, while they haven't been well attended, they certainly have been open and available. Thank you.
So my response to that is none of us are arguing over whether the density is right or wrong. We're arguing is over the process. And the fact is that you had a neighborhood meeting to start with. But when you made a change, you didn't have a neighborhood meeting and you expected them to come to your meeting. Which, Fred, you've been to many school committee meetings with me and know that we're the only ones there. And you have to invite people. You have to go and repeat what you did at the beginning. So that's my concern.
Yeah.
Eric.
So, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a dense portion of Housatonic and used to be able to open up my window and talk to my friend that was living right next door because we're so close. And I guess if this development here was in that same exact neighborhood and it was branched off to the woods that were behind there, I would see it more fitting. I guess in line with just about everything everybody said here is just if there was a neighborhood meeting in August and now it's 6 months later and we're just unrolling something different. Yeah, that obviously doesn't make any of us feel very good. I do have a few other questions.
Yeah, that's all. So go ahead. We all.
So I guess with this, after everything that we've just said, I was wondering with the 30 houses or 20 houses, you said the focus is going to be under 80% AMI. And I was wondering if we had a number, whether it was 20 houses, how many of those were going to be 80% and under, and how many are going to be 100%? And I asked that because especially Carolyn mentioned about how we do need firefighters, nurses and everything. I'm just concerned that really in this area and in South County, it's almost like you need to be at 100% or 120%. And I'm worried that everybody needs a house. I understand that. We just had a bunch of units go in for 80% or under. And I'm worried that there's a whole group of people that are getting missed out here, you know, whether it's construction workers, firemen, police officers, nurses. And they're having to travel even farther in, and I'm worried that we're missing out on that whole group of people as well.
If I can answer.
Go ahead.
By law, we're restricted, because we purchased the land with CPA money. We're restricted to no more than 100% of AMI. We'd love to go to 120% because that's more workforce housing. There are some efforts underway outside of this group to redefine what that AMI is. As to this particular site, the markup that we've done so far, and it's still fluid, shall we say, is 20 units at 80% AMI and 10 units at 100% AMI. That was the markup that I submitted. And that was the sort of working ratio that we were looking at. Habitat has their own standards statewide and regionally that are often much more restrictive to that. But they've had discussions with their state habitat groups that this is a more challenged environment. In other words, in Pittsfield, they're building 65% units and renting and selling them at 65% AMI. You can't do that in Great Barrington. And so they've gotten more freedom to allow these units to be sold at 80 and 100% AMI.
That, so it's 80% and 100 is what we're shooting, the numbers.
Yes.
We're also gonna have some units at 60%. So on the ones that are 2 bedrooms, because the fact that they're 2 bedrooms mean that they're probably smaller family sizes, or maybe even a 1 person, because we did do a lot of outreach with businesses and met with their employees to find out what their needs were. And what we were finding was there was a lot of 1 and 2 people households. So in order to kind of figure out how are they going to afford to purchase, we do have to have some that are in the 60-65%. But those will probably be the 2-unit properties.
Garfield, do you want to ask a question? We'll just keep going around. I have a lot of questions. I'm sure Lee does too. So.
I wanted to know when you said you had 2 different styles of houses. Are they both going to be sustainable? In other words, are they going to have the same shelf life, if you will? One to be better than the other? I think that they're both equal, even though they're different structures. That I'd like to know.
All under the Department of Housing and Community Development, you cannot have any changes between somebody who's purchasing a home for 100% and somebody who's purchasing it for 80%. They have to be the same quality. Everything has to be the same. And because we're going to be doing panelized homes, those are, the panels are built in a climate controlled environment. We're going to be building to 0 energy ready. So everybody will have a very nice quality home.
Now, I have another question. What if, first of all, I need to know whether I need to recuse myself. I am obviously a member of the affordable housing, and I'm on the select board, and we are going to make a decision. So I don't know if that calls for me to.
We'll wait for that because Ed's already recused himself. So if you have to, you need to talk to the state about that. If we do, we have a big problem because there would be only 3 of us and they need a super majority. But if you have to, you have to. We could throw everything into turmoil right there.
Well, I'll continue speaking and ask if we are going back, if it does happen to go back to 20, what's that gonna do to this project? Is it gonna throw back words and tizzy and then have to start throwing our hands up and acting like we don't know what we're gonna do when we should be able to do 20 if we're gonna do 30?
They had plans for 20, so I'm not concerned about throwing this project into a tizzy.
They said that these 30 plans just came out last week or finished them last week, so.
Oh, I do have one other. The lottery. We had mentioned that we were going to, I think, give preferential treatment to people that live in Great Barrington, and work in Great Barrington. Is that gonna happen?
No, we're not having a local preference. And the reason that we don't want to have a local preference is because there's a significant number of units that people from Housatonic or Great Barrington will be able to apply. One of the concerns that many people have when you say local preference is that it keeps people out that you would want to live in your community. So especially in many communities where it's a high predominance of white people, the message that gets out to people of color is you're not welcome here. And I don't think that that's what the town of Great Barrington is wanting to say.
Please go ahead.
I'm still kind of focusing on this, change, which is pretty impactful, I think, to the residents. So going from 20 to 30. And, I guess my procedural question, I don't really understand with the planning board that this came to be because did they say that they weren't going to pass it if it was still at 20? Is that a question that, because I don't really understand the pressure that it seemed that we had agreed on 20, the residents had signed off, and Habitat for Humanity had signed off, and then when it went to the planning board, then it expanded to 30. So I'm just wondering where that rub is, that the planning board is leading this, and should we feel that it's not going to go forward if it goes back to the planning board and it's 20? I mean, is this going to kill the project? So I guess it's
First, if you can answer this, I think when Chris can.
Hi, yes. As part of the planned unit residential development bylaw, the planning board has a preliminary review even before the special permit application comes in, and then they become a review board for you. So I think it was either August or
September, correct.
September, the planning board had a preliminary review, seeing a 20 home plan, I believe.
Yes.
And strongly encouraged the Housing Trust and Habitat to put more units in. Number one, because some members of the board thought that many more units could fit under zoning, and that's correct. But encouraging the applicant, recognizing the need for homes to look at, more than 20. As Carolyn recounted, there were some who wanted to see 40. The applicant and the engineer and Habitat thought 30 could possibly fit, and so that's what they worked into their special permit application. So it wasn't an ultimatum, it was the planning board saying we could put more under zoning, let's put more, we need more. The applicant, of course, has had, or the Habitat has had neighborhood meetings, and I think that wasn't necessarily represented at the meetings and wasn't aware of that side of the concern.
Okay.
But planning board had a preliminary meeting, then a recommendation on the special permit. It doesn't lock you in, doesn't lock anybody into that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's up to this board to decide what's correct, and it may be up to the applicant to review.
With permission, I'd like to elaborate on that, if I may, please, because I think it's important to just kind of round out the narrative on that. So as just stated, the whole PERD process, there's a preliminary development review. And in our experience, generally speaking, that the input from the planning board is very important as we file the special permit to understand what was the feedback that was received during that, and how does the special permit application as filed reflect that feedback. It's not an ultimatum. It's not an all or nothing here. From our perspective as the applicants here and doing a great deal of this work and seeing other zoning proposed and either being approved or denied, from our perspective, we felt it more important to show, in an effort to, one, meet the needs that are clearly and I think agreed upon by most, if not all, that those exist. It was more important for us to file a special permit that could show that greater density and show a scheme that works on the property. So again, that 20 unit concept that was prepared in the August, discussed with the planning board in September, and we took that time from September until when we filed the special permit application in the beginning of February to go from 20 units to 30 units, to try and do so in a thoughtful way that one factored in the feedback from the planning board, but just from a homeowner perspective, a logistics and operation and maintenance, ongoing maintenance of the property here. Obviously, going from 20 units to 30 units, it's more in an irregularly shaped lot. It wasn't as if we just made the circle bigger to make a larger radius with more frontage, and there's 10 more units. There was a great deal of thought that went into that. Certainly you as a special permit granting authority, we felt it more important to show you a plan that has the greater density and have this type of discussion than to come in with a special permit application for 20 units and then have a report from the planning board and others to say, well, they didn't take into account any of the feedback that we provided as a part of the special permit. So it's a difficult process. There's a number of priorities that we're trying to please. Designed by committee is always, I've gained a few gray hairs through the process, but it's been a good process. And, really, our intention is to show that we've got the ability to build 30 homes on this property and can make it work. It was never a deliberate or intentional dismissal of what was ever told to the neighborhood over the summer of 2022. It was more a matter of continuing on the design and permitting process here, that the feedback that we were receiving, if we wanted to have favorable recommendations, which is typically the goal in filing a special permit, we wanted to ensure we've done our diligence to do that. But we've certainly heard all the feedback this evening here, and it's not our intention to be a bad neighbor or for there to be a perception that we're somehow trying to get something passed. Obviously, when we filed the special permit application, it was for 30 units, and we knew very well that would go to a number of boards as a part of the formal special permit review. And that's the plans that we submitted earlier this week were in response to feedback that we had received from the planning board as a part of the formal special permit review that was at the end of February, just a few weeks ago here, as well as the Board of Health hearing that we had last week. We wanted to hear any feedback or anything that may impact the site plan, to have that reflective of the plans that are of record here. So that's just to give a picture on the timeline here. That's really been the evolution, the priorities that we had coming before the select board and trying to show a good faith effort of trying to address as much of the feedback, that we received in our interdepartmental review. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yeah,
also.
I do have one, hold on. I do have one question though. Just so I'm understanding the process, because I'm already getting people saying to me, well, the planning board discusses their open meetings, we should have heard that. Well, that's what I look at is the recommendation from the planning board, which came today from you. Had nothing about density in it. It was a positive recommendation. Would that not normally have said, we recommend a higher density, we recommend 30, not 20? How did that occur?
So the special permit submittal is, as Brent said.
Yeah.
After 20 units, after a preliminary review the special permit submittal was developed. Hearing the planning board, special permit came in with 30 units. That's what the planning board reviewed last month and made a positive recommendation.
Okay,
That's the 30 unit plan. I should say that some members of the planning board still didn't think that met their comments back in September. But it received a three in favor, none against, 2 abstention vote. And that's a positive record.
We won't even get into that.
So, but anyway, it is just a recommendation based on the 30.
No, and I understand, I respect the planning board's knowledge of zoning and density. I also respect the neighbors, and so and as do the planning board, so that's why we're here.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry, this is Attorney Goodman. I'm wondering if the Board of Selectmen would be interested in discussing phasing as a method of alleviating some of the concerns. So some people are saying, what will it be like when different housing styles are on the property? What if there's a water pressure problem? And it may be, I know that Habitat intends to build in phases, and I'm wondering if your approval could structure approval of a certain phase. They could come back to the to the Board of Selectmen and confirm that it's working the way people want to see it work.
We will discuss that. We probably won't get to it tonight, but we definitely can discuss that. Yeah, Lee, go ahead and then go back down.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, I have a lot of very specific questions, which I'm not even wanting to get to because I'm still really displeased about where this seems to be going, going from 20 to 30. So I am hesitant about going into the minutia of all my questions.
It's also 8 o'clock.
And it's also
we may
8
want to continue this
So,
to
yeah.
date and time certain.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my overall thing is really the impact on the existing neighborhood and the boundary between the existing houses, and if there was a difference between this 20 unit plan versus 30 unit plan, what shrunk? Like, is it the distance between the houses? Is it the distance between the existing neighborhood and the newly built ones? Like, something had to change significantly. So again, I'm looking at the impact on the existing neighborhood. So is that boundary smaller, or, so I don't really know the difference between this 20 unit thing that was pitched to us and now the 30 units. So, so what is this impact? Is it a significant impact now to the existing neighborhoods? Trying to squeeze in these 10 extra homes. So I guess that's a question for Brent. Really, what is the impact between the 20 and the 30 unit plan? And
Sure.
what did they lose? So.
Sure. So briefly, we did have an increase in the number of units along this western portion here, and then we really looked more closely at this southwestern portion of the property. Here's where we added the units. We had the same curb cut location coming from North Plain Road into the property, the same general road layouts. That has not changed. So in terms of the phasing, one of the questions would be, well, how could you go from 20 to 30? The nice thing is, the general plan for the infrastructure for the road layout, the sewage collection, the drainage, that has generally speaking stayed the same. We've obviously accommodated the additional units in the southwestern portion that saw the growth and development here. And one of the things that we've actually done with this plan compared to the one that was submitted that the planning board reviewed was these northernmost units. Initially, those were actually set back further. And even the plan that I had, the 20 units on that, these units were actually closer to our northern side property boundary. So those we've actually moved further from our neighbors than we had initially discussed. So we've tried to still consolidate as much of the building to the center of the property as much as we can, meeting our PERD setbacks, meeting our underlying spatial requirements between the buildings and having parking in there. But generally, an increase along this western portion. And then the southwestern portion is really where we saw the increase in density from. That's how we were able to add the additional units. And I believe we also converted this from a single to a condominium down here. So that was generally the change in terms of the entrance road and units. Those generally have not changed. These units here on the eastern boundary, those have really stayed generally the same as they were as a 20 unit concept. Here was more of the western and southwestern side where we saw the change to increase from the 20 to the 30 itself. We still maintain the same landscape buffer that would be required regardless if it was 10 homes or 40 homes. That's still a PERD requirement that we provide that landscape buffer. And again, what we've committed to and shown on this plan is an absolute minimum. I know there's a desire, and there's frankly a desire to have the homeowners help select some of what that landscaping looks like as they move in and truly take ownership of their lot. One of the things that we've done to demonstrate the proposal meets the PERD requirements is these blue lines help to demarcate. These eventually would be a part of the condominium documents or association documents that Attorney Goodman will prepare. But this just goes to show that each house has dedicated the amount of square footage per lot that is required for a property within a planned unit residential development. Some of the portions have gotten smaller to accommodate the 10 additional units compared to what would have been there during the 20 unit concept here. But in overall, that is how we increased from what was discussed in April compared to what you have before you this evening and what was reviewed by the other boards over the last month.
Brent, do you have an overlay that you can show? Is there a way to overlay what you have had planned originally, and so we can really see the demarcations between what was originally planned and promised to now? I really don't have a sense of really the impact to the neighborhood. And you're saying the units are smaller now. Is that?
I don't have that readily available. I'm happy to stop sharing my screen and maybe move on to some other questions. I can try and pull that together.
Okay.
So my other question in conjunction with this is the fact that 30 units would have on the neighborhood for Housatonic water. And I don't think there's an answer to this because it's unpredictable. But I've got to think, and maybe you do have an answer, that the 30 units would be more of a stressor on the water, the cleanliness and pressure than 20 units.
I know when we submitted the special permit application, when we verified with the AECom study, and when we submitted to the Housatonic Waterworks, the opinion that they gave us was based on the 30 unit development. So I want to be clear that when that opinion that was provided in writing by the Housatonic Waterworks was based on the 30 units. So even though the original layout had shown 20, the opinion that we received and the opinion that I still hold based on the review of the AECom study is there is sufficient pressure and volume in that line to support the 30 homes.
And maintain the pressure and cleanliness of the neighborhood.
Definitely the pressure, and with the improvements that are being made at the plant here, I'm confident that when that's able to be operational year round here, that those issues will be less impactful than they certainly are now. Unfortunately, I can't speak to the timeline as to when that will receive formal DEP approval. I mean, any research that you'll do on that will see that treatment of that water at the source is truly the permanent remedy to that here. The filters serve as an acknowledgement that there's some issues currently and that we've accounted for that for our homeowners. But I can't speak further for the Housatonic Waterworks and what the timing of those permanent improvements to the treatment process will be. I don't want to be disingenuous.
My other concern, and I appreciate your honesty, my other concern is the price of the filters. You're putting in the unit, but the filters, depending on the cleanliness of the water that's going through them, have to be changed quite often. And these are not people who necessarily have ever owned a home and don't need the added expense of filters.
Sure.
But that's our problem.
Well, no, I'd like to address that specifically because that goes to, first off, thinking about what is involved with the potential water supply for this type of development, albeit, private well per private home or a water system here. First and foremost, in terms of the overall building cost, we have a MassWorks grant that will allow us to connect to an existing public water supply that exists. I will defer to Mr. Remble, but I am not confident that the MassWorks grant will allow us to drill a private well for each one of these homes. And for anyone who's seen a well drill, that could be $12,000, $15,000 easily. So that would be a cost that Habitat would have to absorb upfront and put into the sale price of the home to absorb that. The other thing with respect to the homeowners association or whatever that legal structure ends up looking like, understanding that each of these homes will likely have the same type of filtration system, it would be our intention that this organization actually provides the homeowners. It allows us to actually set the terms on how it will be done. We will determine based on which manufacturer we select to utilize what their protocol is for maintenance and what their the schedule and the fee is for that. We can write into our association documents that as a part of your buying this home, along with all of the other rules and regulations about how you maintain your home, where you put your trash, where you park your car, where you don't park your car, all of those things, we can put right in there that you will have the system. It will be maintained by the homeowners association. Our contractor will have the right to come in and change that. And by the way, the homeowner themselves will likely get a better, more advantageous pricing for those filters and the work to be done. If it's contracted and done on a regular basis. Many times, any system that you have when there's deferred maintenance, you certainly have more problems that leads to more expensive repairs. But frankly, it allows us to get more competitive pricing for a vendor to come in and for 2 or 3 days, they're going to go through every home at 0 North Plain Road and change the water filters. They can order the materials in bulk. They can send one crew or a series of crews down and do all the homes at once, as compared to a number of different vendors coming in all to service 1 or 2 individual homes here. We're hoping our economy of scale will represent a better outcome for the homeowner than if we were asking them to, here's the keys, here's the manual, and good luck to you. Our intention is to see through the life cycle of this here, that one, we don't put them in a position where, one, we're collecting the money to do the maintenance, so they don't have to do that on an ongoing basis. That one payment they make, that's going to cover their summer lawn mowing, in the winter that's going to be their snow plowing, and this will be factored in as a part of one of the costs that they pay on an ongoing basis and as a part of their financial education when they're approaching Habitat and they're thinking about a 2-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom. Carolyn, please feel free to cut me off here, but you'll go through every single line item from utilities. The other thing that's really important to mention, it was discussed at length at the Board of Health here, is these homes will be net zero ready, which means the tightness of the building envelope through the siding, the wall construction, the insulation that's utilized, the rating of the windows and doors, that essentially if there were a third party solar panels or a geothermal system installed, that all of the energy consumptive use would be offset by those generated by renewable sources here. So we've laid out the buildings in terms of, I guess I'm going to remiss for not mentioning that earlier here, the layout of the buildings throughout the site has been an attempt to maximize the ability for a future solar orientation. We can't commit to today that these homes will have solar panels here, but we know by siting the buildings in the way that we have, if we're able to develop a partnership with a solar provider or something through Mass Save or other entities, either through the power company, what have you, that we'll actually have the ability to have the utility bills that our homeowners are paying in apartments that may be 50, 100-year-old buildings that have paper thin insulation, single pane windows, very inefficient furnaces here, that they're economic on a month-to-month basis here with this brand new construction, net zero ready, green community building standards here. They are far and above the efficient, 96% efficient heat pump mini split units here. They're really in a much better position than where they are currently, likely renting an apartment.
Steve.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So just going back to the lottery, I know there's no local preference, but can you just tell me more on how that works? Is it a Massachusetts thing, or is it a New England, or how just out of curiosity, how that works? Is it a national thing?
No, so basically we have to submit with our lottery plan, our fair affirmative marketing schedule, which means it goes to the library, all the nonprofit places. We have to run ads in the paper, and all of that is done in Berkshire County. And then we do have to list it with CHAPA, that's the Community Housing Association. And that's just so that DHCD can regulate that we did what we were supposed to do. But I've been with Habitat for 15 years, and all of our people have come from Berkshire County.
Oh, Berkshire, okay, yeah. So I think at the end of the day, it comes to me as far as like, I'm kind of done with the questions, but it's I just feel like it's gotten too far at 20 to here tonight to be discussing 30 personally.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Great Barrington, Housatonic are actually one.
That's right.
We have quite a bit of divide between the two already. This to me, I would say doesn't pass the smell test. You can't say one thing and then at the end come and do another. So that I think is not good. I think there's no doubt about it. We need the homes in Great Barrington. There's no question about it. But if you say one thing, then you need to do it and not come up with a late-minute plan. And we had discussed this, the community was aware of it. That's what we said, and I think it's going to create even a further divide amongst residents of Housatonic and Great Barrington, which should not be.
Do you got anything else? Yeah, I guess my one question is, it's kind of unusual when you're going to approve something, that there isn't a set number of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom. That's kind of up in the air. And I'm a little concerned, let's use the number 20 for the sake of having a number, that I would think 15 3-bedrooms is much different than 5 3-bedrooms as far as size of the house, amount of traffic, utilities, etc. Is there some divide that we could say you're gonna have up to so many 3-bedrooms, etc., or is it gotta be completely flexible for your plans?
So I can answer that question. When we had 20 units, we had it broken down into X number 3 bedrooms, X number 4 bedrooms. And then when we went out and started talking to people that work in Great Barrington, we found out that, okay, there's a need for 2-bedroom home ownership, which we don't usually do. We usually always have 3 to 4 bedrooms just because resale value and everything. But once we found that there was a need for the 2 bedrooms, that's how we, I'm gonna say, we're look at squishy for the unit. So when you start doing 2-unit condos, that's one building, and we figured in our configuration there were going to be three buildings of 2 bedrooms each. So that's 6 units right there. And then we added in and we made some of the footprints smaller on some of the houses. But I think right now we only have 3 4-bedrooms, right, Brent? Oh, I can't hear you.
That sounds correct, and that's reflective of the different size footprints that you see here. Obviously, we've targeted more smaller homes here. Mr. Chairman, I agree generally, you know, with regards to the number of bedrooms and how it would be easier to allocate. I think the concern that I certainly heard from Carolyn and the Habitat team was just the unknown of just who the actual applicants will be here, and ensuring that we and it's the same discussion with regards to showing the 30 units versus the 20 is that we obtain a special permit that that gives us the ability to deliver what it is that people are looking for. I think I would like to think that what we've shown here in terms of the number of 3 and 4 bedroom homes shown on the site plan here, we're not in a position that, you know, there may be the ability to change, you know, a couple of 2 bedrooms to 3 bedroom homes here, but there's not a great deal of flexibility in that north to south just dimension of the property, and the homes, the driveway, the setbacks between buildings here at a certain point. If there's a concern that somehow, you know, there's been one discussion and a different thing, and if we leave here now talking about a different, I don't foresee how we could, from the site plan that we've submitted here, convert all of those to 3 or 4 bedroom homes, have a greater impact on utilities, and physically be able to fit all those units on the site here. I think the 30 really does represent, based on just that odd configuration of the landmass itself, the design challenge to show how that would even fit. I don't think we have the ability to increase the size of the houses or increase the bedrooms even more from what we've shown now.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Couple things. I do echo Eric's concern about missing the sweet spot of workforce housing. I really think there is quite a need. So I would ask Caroline, I think it was mentioned that the breakdown was 20 units of the 80% AMI and 10 units of 100% AMI. But then Caroline, I think you mentioned there were also is 60% AMI. So I'm getting 2 different pieces of information. So I just wanted to clarify that. And do we have any leeway in terms of, you know, kind of honing in on workforce housing closer to 100%?
There's a lot of things that go into those calculations. So we were thinking, again, with the 2-unit condos, those would be the people that would be closer to the 65%. All of the 3 and 4 bedrooms would be at the 80 and the 100. But you also have to recognize that there are some funding sources that when you go over 80%, you cannot get funding for. So that has to be built into the schedule as well. So
it all has to be approved by Department of Housing and Community Development too.
Right.
And they are give a yay or nay on the plan.
And we can't go over 100% no matter what.
Yeah. So you mentioned there's going to be a homeowners association or a condo. Would there be any rules for short-term rentals? I mean, can people kind of buy the homes, and because the homes are so closely together, I'm just worried that might.
They're not allowed to be a Habitat homeowner. You must reside in the home as your primary residence.
Okay, so they wouldn't be able to do that?
Nope, not allowed.
Okay, and just one last question. What is the actual distance wall to wall between the houses? I have the plans, but I don't really get a sense of how close are the houses to each other.
The closest are 30 feet. Some of them are slightly farther away, but 30 feet is I think the minimum setback that we have between buildings. So again, when we go to looking at the apartments that they used to live in here, now they actually have a great deal of distance there. And the driveways are 10 feet wide, just for your visual reference there. So if that helps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna continue this. We're not gonna close the public hearing. We're done with public comment. We're not closing the public hearing yet, because I think there'll be more questions of the applicant. So I would entertain a motion if the applicant is available for March 27th. At 6 p.m., Monday, March 27th, 6 p.m., both virtually and at the town hall.
I'm available.
Me too.
Okay. Say so moved.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second by Garfield, I have a motion by Lee, roll call vote, Eric,
Aye.
Garfield,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
and I, it's unanimous.
Thank you all for your time. Have a good evening.
Yeah, thank you very much, you too.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so we do have National Grid here, and they sat through this whole thing, so I will.
I'm gonna refuse myself out of abundance of caution.
Okay, but that's good, that's good. So I have Ed back, right, Ed, you're there? I'm not so sure what we're doing. Ed, are you there? Okay, so there's three of us, we can do this with three. Mark, do you want to walk us through the ones we're not voting on? Because
I
it's
think, well, there's only one, I think, that has, that I'm concerned with, that I'd like to hear from these folks. So,
Okay, come on up, introduce yourself. And our town manager has a question.
My name is Adam Dion. I'm a design contractor for National Grid, here on behalf of two different work requests. Petition or work request number 306-11198. And the other one that I can speak for is 306-11209. They're new midspan poles being installed on Seacon Road and Alfred Road. And the scope of this work was we're upgrading the system out there because it's a poor performing feeder, so we're reconductoring with a bigger, heavier conductor. We need to replace the poles, bring them up to standard. And in doing so, we need to reduce the amount of spans of 200 foot, so we have to install a couple of mid-span poles.
Let the record show the select board member Abrams is back, so we will have four. Mark, you can go ahead with your question.
Sure, actually, the question wasn't related to any of those three applications, so.
Then you might.
Okay, so the question I have for you is related to 307-27829, the first application on for one joint pole on South Main Street.
Yep.
I don't know if this visual will help you here, but the question is right here, right about here, this is National Grid's property. Right about this line is where the state highway layout begins. And it looks to me like your request, your petition is actually on state property rather than within the town layout.
Right, yeah, so in some cases, we'll kind of ask permission from both. Just to have all bases covered. So if we don't need permission from the town, then we can revoke that application.
Have you received, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Have you received permission from the state?
I'm not sure where we're at in that part of the process, but we definitely have gone through them as well.
Okay. You want us to-
That was the only question I had.
Okay, so, let's have a motion, just the number to, approve number is 307-27829.
Okay, we'll just keep going to them.
Yeah.
Okay. I make a motion to approve, the National Grid, these polls, number 307-27829.
We'll do one of them. Just because we like to be here. tonight. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, a second by Ed. These are all going to be roll call votes.
Don't see.
Do we have any questions on this one? Hearing none. Garfield?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Lee? And I. It's unanimous.
I make a motion to approve poll number 307-07497.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call Garfield?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
And I. Unanimous.
I make a motion to approve number 306-11198.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, any discussion? Garfield,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Lee,
Uh,
and I, unanimous.
I make a motion to approve number 306-11209.
Second.
Any discussion? Garfield,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
and I, unanimous.
I make a motion to approve number 306-11198.
Second.
Any discussion? Garfield,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
and I, unanimous. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for your time.
Very good.
I do apologize for our tardiness.
You were no.
Communication.
You missed an exciting part of the meeting too.
Thank you for taking the time.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Just to catch up, we had a total of 30 people at the high point of the meeting, 10 attendees, 10 panelists and 20 attendees. Citizens speak time, unless I missed something in the meeting and someone will tell me. Citizens speak time, just raise your hand. Go ahead, Jan.
Yeah, hi, Jan Wojcik again. I had a question about that project that was just talked about. Should I save it for the March 27th meeting or?
We're actually, we are not taking any more public comment on it, and since it's a special permit, my recommendation is you email the board.
Okay,
That'll serve the same purpose.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Seeing no other citizen speak time. Select board time.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Lee.
No.
Ed,
Nothing.
and I have nothing, and Garfield doesn't get to say because he. Media time. And by unanimous consent, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.